Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you virtually, at least. Welcome to my home in Melrose, Massachusetts. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to demonstrate for you some really cool, easy techniques that will help you start cooking. And I'm going to focus on some food safety and knife skills as well. So with that said, we're going to put up a PowerPoint. Okay. So one of the most important things we should all know is how to store food, how to know food, how long it will last in a refrigerator, how to organize yourself. So when you go to the supermarket and you're buying groceries and meat, particularly chicken, make sure that in your refrigerator, bottom drawer is where you store any raw meat. You want to keep them very separate in case there's any cross-contamination due to the juices from that meat dripping onto your salad or onto a ketchup bottle or whatever and contaminating, and you could get food poisoning from that. So always make sure raw meat, fish, everything raw on the bottom drawer in your refrigerator, completely separate from everything else. And when you're chopping or dicing any chicken or protein or any animal protein in fish, make sure that you completely put that board away and that knife away, clean your work area before you go on to another, and wash your hands before you go on to cook chopping vegetables. Because that's the most common thing that people get food poisoning at home, is because they're cross-contaminating surfaces. Always good to have your surfaces very clean and organized. So gloves, I mean, when I'm handling chicken, at work, all our staff, I always wear them at home too when I'm handling any meat. It's just an extra protection. I make sure as soon as I stop handling it, I take them off and I wash my hands, which is really important. So clean as you go. If you don't go. That's kind of the motto when you're cooking. And have fun, enjoy it. It's what we talk about, having fun. When you're looking at recipes and you want to follow an exact recipe that you know is a favorite, that's great, and you should follow it. But when you're learning how to cook, you should think about kind of freewheeling it a little bit and using flavors that you like. And I'll show you as we walk through that. So you can get the desired texture and flavor that you want when you're cooking your food, because all our tastes are slightly different. Some people like more heat in their food, some people like no heat in their food. So by adding ingredients that you like, particularly, or who you're cooking for, it's always best to be more neutral when you're cooking for a group with flavors. So we'll talk about that a little more. So in a kitchen too, fire safety is really important. I have, right here in my own home, I have a fire extinguisher. Thankfully, I've never had to use it, but it's always important that you know if there is a fire on your stove. If you're cooking with oil and you're deep frying, do not use a fire extinguisher. You use a fire blanket, or you get a very damp towel and you push it on the flame away from yourself. The same thing when you're using a fire extinguisher, you point it at the base of a fire. And then make sure, obviously, the fire is out and there's nothing smoldering. So be careful that you know that, and it's always good to have a fire extinguisher. You never know when you may or may not need it. And on your stove too, just make sure that you're cleaning it. There's no buildup of grease, especially in the oven, so you won't catch fire. There's oven pads that you can put in your oven and you just take them out and change them. They work great. And a lot of ovens have self-cleaning configurations on them, so you can very easily clean the oven. It's good to do that once a month. Okay, and the next slide. So food safety. It's all about time and temperature. Okay, how long food is left out for and what temperature that food is at, because that will indicate bacterial growth on food. and food will sour. So we talked about keeping your surfaces really clean. That's a given. When you do cook your food, you want to keep your hot food above 140 Fahrenheit and your cold food below 40 degrees, because in the middle is the ideal temperature for growing bacteria. When you're cooling things off, if you are making a chili or a stew and you want to save it, don't put it in a giant container with a lid on. You want to put it in smaller containers, leave it out for an hour or so it can cool down in the kitchen. And then when you put it in your refrigerator, don't put a lid on until it's fully cool. Otherwise, you're just trapping the heat. And when you defrost food, you can safely defrost food in your refrigerator 2 or 3 days for a chicken, or you can defrost in a microwave on the defrost button. But it's not advisable to leave food out in a sink to defrost overnight, because the potential of foodborne illness arising from that practice is very high. Now, food safety. Temperatures are the most important. So I would strongly advise everyone to purchase a food safety thermometer, a food temperature thermometer, and use that. When you are cooking chicken, you don't want to undercook it for food safety reasons, but there's nothing as bad as overcooked chicken. It's dry and does not taste good. So the temperature that you want your chicken to reach is 165 degrees. However, you can pull the chicken from the oven at around 163 because it is going to keep cooking. When you take it out, it will easily reach 2 more degrees, and that will be delicious to eat. Ground meats are 155 degrees. That's, for burgers like that. And beef, pork, fish is 145 degrees. It's a much lower temperature than poultry. So you can really achieve great tasting food when you follow the temperatures. And keep that in mind and use your thermometer. And no matter where you're cooking, on your grill, on your stove, it's always good to have that in mind. And the picture of the manual thermometer, I would suggest using a digital. They're much more accurate. Okay. How to use a knife. Okay, I'm going to show you this. So definitely when you start cooking, it's advisable to purchase a good quality set of knives. Or you could buy them piece by piece and go it in a whole set. This is a block I have in the kitchen. And this knife here that I'm holding is called a chef's knife, which is like an all-purpose knife. The smaller knife is what we call a paring knife. And I'm going to just show you how to chop an onion. So for the paring knife, I'm holding it and my tongue is guiding the blade, and I'm peeling the onion down because the roots of the onion are at the base of the onion, and I want all the layers of the onion to stay together and not fall off. So here we go. So very easily taking the outer layer of the onion off. Okay. When you master this, you've mastered it for life. So you see at the end of the bottom of the onion? Sorry. You can see that? I've left it. So I'm going to just keep it intact, but take the kind of raw root off. I take my onion. I'm going to cut the little bit of the outer layer that was on the top. And looking at the base where the root is, I'm going to cut it in half right there. Okay. Now that base is holding the onion together. So I'm going to just cut that off at an angle in, and I'm going to julienne the onion. Now, if you can see my fingers, my thumb is going behind my fingers and my fingers are curling back. I'm using the knife in a rowing motion, and my fingers are touching the blade. So I can't cut myself because my fingers are curved out of the way, and your thumb. That's, if you can master that, that is how chefs cook. And that is how chefs cut, pardon me. And a lot of chefs will cut it with a knife without even looking at what they're cutting, because this comes second nature. So there we have julienne, right? Julienne is little thin strips. If I want to do dice, I'm leaving the end piece of the onion in, and I'm going to go slice the onion across 6 or 7 times, and then I'm going to slice it down from the top. You can see that. Yeah. And then I cut the onion from the top straight down across, and that's giving me dices. So that's a diced onion. Okay? So just for practice, if you can practice on holding your fingers with your thumb behind your fingers, and your fingers are curled in and they're touching the knife, because your fingers are going to guide the knife so it doesn't slip. Really important. Another thing I wanted to tell you is, or share with you, that when you buy a knife set, you'll find one of these in your set. This is called a steel. And you should use this every time you pick up a knife. And you're more likely to cut yourself with a blunt knife than with a sharp knife, because a blunt knife, you're putting more pressure on the, but a sharp knife is going to glide through the onion I just cut. So when I pick up the onion earlier, the knife earlier, I did that to sharpen both of these knives. So every time I pick up a knife, I do that. And it literally keeps the edge on the knife. And you'll notice the difference just, a couple of times when you pick it up to 10 seconds, and you'll keep your knives in good shape. Okay. Yeah. And the best advice anyone can give you about using a knife is practice. Once you practice it, it's like riding a bicycle. You'll get it. Okay, so there I am over there. So we're going to cook a meal together, but I want to show you how simple it is to make dressings. And when you think of dressings, you mostly will think of a salad, but dressings can be used to marinate meats, to add flavor to meats or vegetables that you're cooking, and in a hot component. So the recipe I have given you is the classic dressing recipe. And if you have one of these bowl jars, we can use that. And we're going to make that dressing. So, finely chopped shallots. You've got a teaspoon of finely chopped shallots. And shallots are from the onion family. They're beautiful flavor. It adds a lot of that onion concentrated flavor to whatever you're cooking. So a little bit goes a long way. Champagne vinegar. When you're making a dressing, the key is 3 to 1. So acid and oil is 3 to 1. 3 oil to 1 acid. And the acid is vinegar or lemon juice or orange juice or lime juice, but mostly vinegar. So I'm going to eyeball it because I know the jar, and I'm going to add 1/3, one part vinegar, and I'm going to add some mustard. So when you're using mustard, the key ingredients for a dressing are good quality mustard, and this is Grey Poupon, excellent mustard. You don't want to use a hot dog mustard. It doesn't give you the same quality, the same taste. So you need mustard, oil, and vinegar. They're the main ingredients. And then what you add to that, or if you change the oils out or the vinegars out, gives you completely different flavors. So another thing as well, when you're making your own dressing, you know what's going into it. So when you go to the store, you're purchasing dressings that have lots of ingredients that are not good for you at all, especially like high fructose corn syrup, and some have preservatives. So we're making our own today. So I'm putting in the vinegar, the mustard caramel, and because I'm going to cook with this, I'm going to use an oil that has a higher smoke point. So this is the California Everyday, which is great, so it can reach a higher smoke point. But if it's a canola oil or a blended olive oil, works great. The extra virgin olive oil I don't use for cooking, I use for salads because it can taste bitter if it gets too hot. Now, I'm adding the oil and some chopped herbs. So I went outside and picked a little earlier some chives, some basil, and some parsley. And I'm going to add that to it. So a couple of ways you can chop your herbs. Obviously by doing exactly what I showed you earlier. Put the fingers behind. Rocking motion. Keep your thumb right behind your fingers. Now, I like a lot of herbs when I'm cooking, so I grow a lot of herbs. The word fresh comes to mind when you cook with herbs. Things taste fresher. You have that crisp, fresh taste. And if I was using this dressing as a vinaigrette, I wouldn't change a thing. Put it all in and put that over a nice tomato salad. It'll be perfect. Now I have some salt and pepper, just a little pinch for taste. Now I didn't have to go getting a mixing bowl or do anything like that. I've got all my ingredients in the bowl jar, and you can make these up ahead. There we have it. You get the bowl jar and you shake it. And it emulsifies the oil and vinegar. The mustard helps do that, so it looks a little thicker. And what's really important, when you're cooking, you should taste everything. So I'm just going to taste it. Delicious, yum. Let's make another one. So I'm going to show you how to make the roast chicken shortly. And we're going to use that dressing. So remember, you can make a ranch dressing with fresh herbs. You can make a sesame seed dressing using sesame oil, fresh toasted sesame seeds. There's so many. So I'm going to do one more. We'll do a balsamic vinaigrette. How about that?
Chef, when you put herbs in oil, does it preserve them or do they spoil just as quickly? Do you need to refrigerate your dressing?
Yes, you should refrigerate your dressing. They will keep easy for a week in a dressing, but they won't spoil very quickly. They may go darker. Sometimes when you put herbs in oil and vinegar, they will darken a little bit, but their flavor is there. So you definitely refrigerate all your dressings. So I've got balsamic vinegar, and you don't need to buy a very expensive balsamic vinegar. You know, just buy an average balsamic vinegar that you see in the store, because some of the, you know, super duper 20-year-old balsamic vinegars is a little bit of a scam sometimes. I'm going to put mustard. I love shallots, so I put these in everything that I make dressings. And let's use just chives. So here's a fun little gadget that you might like. It's a scissors with like about 6 scissors in one. And you take your herbs, and if you don't want to chop, because we're not using a big mixing bowl, you know, if you're coming home from work and you want to make this real quick and you don't want all the washing up, you can just take your little scissors and it does all the chopping for you. And it's perfect for herbs. Let's put some vinegar, this one we're going to make as a salad, so I'm going to use the higher quality extra virgin olive oil. We'll use that for a salad. You can make these on a Sunday for the whole week. But it's going to flavor your food really well. Now, so this is our balsamic dressing. Now I want to taste it. Yum. Very good. Okay. And you don't have to go crazy measuring everything, but you know, 3-to-1 is the oil and vinegar. So just use that as your guideline. And you will be amazed the flavor that this is going to bring to your food. It'll be fantastic.
And about how much salt, Chef?
I just put a pinch in, and so when you're using salt and vinegar, you don't need a whole lot of salt because vinegar acts on your palate in the very same way that salt does. So you can actually go without salt if you prefer. I just put a tiny bit in, just a little bit of pinch, just to give it that final seasoning. But the acid in your vinegar will do very much the same thing. So let's cook lunch or dinner. So I want to make this as easy as possible for you. So when you think about what's for dinner, think about one pot cooking or one dish roasting, right? So I have a bunch of these dishes. They're oven safe, but they're also beautiful to put it in the middle of a table to serve dinner or lunch. And it's not to have it family style. So your guests, your family can pick what they want and as much as they want. So you're not portioning food for anyone. So I'm going to take this dish, put it down, and I'm going to put my gloves on. And the recipe that you have is delicious roasted chicken and vegetables. So I picked some nice vegetables that I saw at the store yesterday. Cauliflower and Brussels sprouts are obviously very popular. And tomatoes, it's June already. So here's my ingredients. Now, so very, very simple. And all of this goes in the oven at once. So if you can see on my screen, I hope you can. Yep, you can see I've got vegetables and I have them separate from the chicken, but I have chicken, bone-in thigh chicken is the best flavor on chicken you're going to get. It has, I leave the bone in, leave the skin on, absolutely delicious. So I have our dressing that we made. And I'm just going to rub it onto the chicken. Now, you could do this the night before and have it in the refrigerator left. I'll show you how you can do that. So I'm just putting it over the chicken, so I'm getting the flavor all the way in there, on the back and the front. Okay.
Why use bone in? What does that do for you?
So it's cooking on the bone. So you're going to get the flavor from the bone, infused into the, and we make chicken stock from chicken bones. So you're going to have a better intense flavor when you cook with the bone in. So I'm putting the chicken in the dish. I'm putting it nice and snug together. Now, and I have my vegetables. Let me put this out of the way for a second. And vegetables. I'm taking that dressing, what was left of the dressing made, and I'm going to put it over my vegetables. I'm and make sure they get totally soaked up with the dressing. Because this is seasoning, it's seasoning the vegetables. If you don't put anything on, you're going to have bland food. Who wants bland food, right? So I've got the vegetables. They're coated with the dressing. I'm bringing back my other pan, and I'm putting everything in this dish. So cauliflower is white, so I'm going to put the cauliflower in the middle, so we can break up the color a little bit. So this is dinner or lunch for 4. I'm going to put the tomatoes, and when you roast tomatoes, it really concentrates the flavor. It's delicious. You can buy the cauliflower in florets at the store if you want to make life easier. And the Brussels sprouts, I just tossed them, leave them whole. Now, I'm not sure if everyone can see that, but it looks good already, right? And that's going to go into the oven for 15 minutes, I believe I have in here. It's going to go in, yeah. Leave the oven, let your oven preheat first, obviously. So you want to make sure that your dish is going into the oven at the correct temperature. Because ovens usually take, you know, a little bit to heat up. We're cooking it on 165 degrees or 163. So depending on your oven, you know, it can vary between 45 minutes to an hour. So that's why when you're looking at following recipes, be careful not to overdo it and be too precise, because in a recipe you're reading, it might be 5 minutes, but your oven is not calibrated correctly, and therefore you're going to take it out of 45 minutes and think it's cooked. So use your thermometer. Once it hits about 163, pull it out of the oven, and it'll be delicious. So by the magic of Zoom, I cooked one earlier, and this is what it looks like. It's a nice, beautiful, roasted dish, and that is perfect for dinner. And if I want to just freshen it up with some herbs, I will use my little scissors. And I hope everyone has this recipe. So this is so easy to make. Now, if you wanted to, you know, have this completely vegan, well, your dressing is. So you could have roast some tofu in a very similar way, or seitan, and use everything else exactly as it is. And you could have a very tasty vegan lunch or dinner. So remember, the dressing is to give flavor, and it's going to give great flavor. And when I'm cooking too, when you're roasting, it's really important about 20 minutes into the cooking process to take it out of the oven and baste it. So the juices are all going to come out from the chicken. They're going to sink to the bottom. Take a spoon or a turkey baster and just put it back over the vegetables and your chicken. So that way the flavor is going back over and continuing to flavor your food as it's cooking. So we finished a little earlier, I think. So I'll be happy for more questions.
All right, folks, if you have any questions for Chef, you can put them in the chat and I will gladly help relay them. You did all get the recipe as part of your email. You got a basic dressing recipe, and you got the chicken recipe. And Chef, you, for the salad dressing, when you freelanced, you just kept the same basic ratio of oil, vinegar, herbs, right?
Exactly, yeah. So even when I freelance here, I've got sesame oil. I want to do something a little different. I can use sesame oil to keep, I'm looking for a different flavor. And So this is how you can just alternate your oils and your vinegars. So I'm putting oil in there. Now, this is a little one exception. It's very strong. So I would say it's more of a 2-to-1 in this one, but
Okay.
I often do it 3-to-1. So I'm putting lemon juice in. And
A few more questions have come in, Chef. Is there a brand of knife that you recommend?
Wusthoffs are really good. Hinkle are very good knives too.
Okay.
They would be my number.
And the one dish pan, the ceramic kind of dish you had, what is that? Is it a brand? Or where could you get one?
You know, let me check to see if it is a brand. Just says, I can't really see it. But I see them at an Amazon or at the store.
Okay.
See these cookware dishes. This is a nice red one.
All right.
Once they're oven safe, you don't have to go crazy with brand names that are very expensive. But once they're oven safe, a Pyrex dish works just as well.
Okay, terrific. And would you mind showing us the safe posture for holding a knife again? And maybe just turn your hands a little bit because we see a bit of your chef's coat, and it would be great to see your fingers better.
I'm going to.
You can shift your, yeah, that's great, perfect.
So see my finger?
Yep.
My thumb is going right behind and I'm curling my fingers.
Okay.
Keep your fingers like that. It's like a clenched claw. And don't change that at all. That's how your hand stays. Don't move your thumb. Once you have it in that position, it stays there. The knife goes against your fingers. And from here, you're controlling the knife. You never want to be banging a knife on a chopping board. That's, you know, an accident waiting to happen. So you're using a swinging motion with your knife and you're pushing your knife, your fingers are guiding it. And you can't cut your fingers because they're tucked away nicely. So once you master that, that's how you do it. It's a swinging motion and your fingers like this. Never cut with your fingers out. That's a trick.
And can you show us the knife sharpening again using the steel?
Yeah. So this is the steel.
Steel, S-T-E-L, right? S-T-E-E-L.
S-T-E-E-L, yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't ever want to bring the knife towards yourself. You want to pull the knife away and make sure there's nobody close by. So you take your steel, stay in a position, you're not moving. You hold the steel out at about a 45-degree angle. You're hitting the knife at the very base. You're pulling it up all the way through. And that's kind of making a V on the very end of the blade to keep the edge on the blade. So every time you pick up the knife, you should do that. Another safety tip, never put a knife in a sink. When you're finished using your knife, you should. It's a very dangerous instrument to use if not used correctly. So you want to make sure you wash your knife and put it away after you've used it. Don't put it in the sink. Somebody else comes along, then they put their hands in that sink and cut themselves. And it's always better to have a block for your knife so it's not in a drawer in the kitchen that can also cut you. And remember, when you get a good set of knives, you have them for life. They will last a long time.
Can I jump back to salad dressing for the vinegars? Can you use any kind of vinegar? You sherry vinegar or rice wine or anything?
Yes, actually, I would say rice wine is the vinegar I use probably the most because it's more of a neutral flavor. It's not as strong, but I use red wine vinegar, which I have here. Red wine vinegar, great in salads. Definitely a different flavor you're going to get from it. The only vinegar that's not great would be like a malt vinegar. You put vinegar on your fish and chips. So it doesn't make a great dressing. It's a very strong acidic vinegar. But yeah, any other vinegar you want to use, and it's nice to, you know, try different vinegars you see at the store. When you're using with oils too, if you want to use a nut oil, like a walnut oil, it's good to blend it with your olive oil because they can be very strong and you want to keep them in your refrigerator because they'll go rancid very quickly. So nut oils keep in your refrigerator, but they're also great for salads. If you're making an apple walnut salad, a walnut oil will be delicious in that.
Terrific. All right, we have another question on the chat. Do we need to wash the vegetables and chicken? For example, you know, for the onion, after you've peeled it, because the outside of the onion might have had dirt on it. So do you need to wash your vegetables and chicken?
Yes, you should. You should wash everything. Be careful when you're washing chicken, especially. A lot of restaurants don't because they don't want salmonella from the chicken to be spread all over the kitchen by mistake. So when you're washing your chicken, make sure there's nothing else. It's the last thing you wash. And then you got to sanitize that sink. So you got to sanitize the sink, wash it thoroughly. Just always wash vegetables and chicken in cold water, never in hot water. Because when they're in their packet, sometimes there's juices that have been there, you know, a couple of days. So it's good to wash that off. But be very careful, put gloves on, and make sure everything is sanitized after it. I always, if I wash chicken, I store it in a container, separate from everything else until I'm ready to start cooking with it. Or marinate it and put it back in the refrigerator.
All right, I think we got all the questions in the chat. Thank you so much, Chef, for anybody. Oh, wait, one more question. Could you do this on a grill?
Yes, you can do it on a grill. Perfect on a grill. I would do it on a low heat in the grill because you're going to have the chicken. It needs to cook longer because there's a bone in it. But on the heat and maybe on the top rung of a grill. But vegetables, there's little baskets you can buy to put in your grill, which are great for vegetables. But yeah, you can do it on a grill, but don't put it on high heat. It will just burn the outside and the inside will not be cooked.
Terrific.
Summer outdoor.
Folks, Chef Breslin and some of his colleagues are going to be doing this for the next few weeks. I just put a reminder URL in the chat if you have not signed up for other sessions and you had fun today with Chef Breslin. Yummy fun. That URL is in the chat. So thank you so much, Chef.
You're very welcome. Happy cooking.